Everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from, and welcome to the National Archives Christmas Around Australia webinar. For the next hour or so, we're going to fly around the country and dive into some Christmas-themed records that can be found in each National Archives office around Australia. Before we do that, though, importantly, the National Archives of Australia acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and acknowledges their continuing connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the people, their cultures and elders, past, present and emerging. If you have any questions for our presenters throughout the presentation, you can pop them in the chat and I'll read them out at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our first presenter, Taryn, coming to us from the Western Australian office with the Christmas Day Sports Report.
Thanks, Bree. Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending. My name is Taryn, and the tale I'll be sharing with you today is of a memorable Christmas day that occurred 125 years ago in a small community on Western Australia's southeastern border. So from 1877, the coastal settlement of Eucla played a major role in linking the eastern states of Australia to the west via the Intercontinental Telegraph Line, with the Eucla Telegraph Station as a main connection point. The telegraph station was the reason the town existed. At the peak of operations, about 30 telegraphists were employed at Eucla. Their wives and children brought the township's population to about 70 during its peak. This Christmas Day account comes from the pages of the Eucla Recorder, a newspaper published monthly by the staff of the Eucla Telegraph Station. The paper included advertisements promoting local businesses, such as the Eucla Dental Institute, which offered painless extraction-free services. It also included weather reports, sporting news, and the occasional ghost story, which kept readers in the remote town entertained. The goal to entertain was clearly evident by the inclusion of a passage in one of its editions, which read, "If what is recorded here does not every humour fit, we pray you find no fault, till we can find more wit." Perhaps because of its isolation, the small community was close-knit and kept busy with social events and local visits to sites such as the multiple surrounding caves, as reported in the recorder's pages. In 1898, the recorder reported that the forecast for the annual Eucla Christmas tennis match was a roasting 47 degrees, but luckily a cool southeasterly had set in for the holidays. The town's regularly scheduled cricket matches had been neglected the previous week in preparation for the popular Christmas competition. The town's entire population, all 70 of them, turned out to watch as two local teams played doubles, with all competitors putting in solid good work. Excellent volleys brought applause from the crowd, and by the final round, the spectators were properly wound up. Following a long day at the match, the bachelors from the Eucla Telegraph Station shared a Christmas feast. At 8 p.m, the Christmas concert at the Eucla Hall opened, with Mr. Weller singing "Tell Her I Love Her." After a poem recital, a banjo duet was compelled to encore before a 10-minute interval. The Eucla Orchestra played for a time before there was a lively step dance to the banjo. A performer in a bewitching female costume was summoned for an encore before the concert officially closed. Thanks were due to the Ryan family for lending their piano for the festivities. The previous year, Eucla's newly formed athletic and aquatic clubs had held their first sports tournaments on Christmas. The events included a swimming race, standing long jump, and an egg and spoon race. During the events, the Eucla Brass Band entertained the crowds with several popular tunes. Other southwest towns held their own Christmas celebrations in 1898. The Albany township celebrated with a cricket match. The Christmas Eve entertainment included an opening performance at the Garden Theatre by a company of artists under the management of Mr. Frank M. Clark, a well-known comedian at the time. Boxing Day sports matches were held at the local Middleton Beach, with trophies attracting large numbers of entrants for the handicap events. The Albany Band played during the day to enliven the proceedings. Sadly, the Eucla Recorder's days of chronicling life in the town came to an end in 1900, reportedly due to a lack of interest. But luckily for us, there are a couple of photocopies of various pages from the recorder located in the records in the National Archives collection. The town of Eucla met the same fate as its paper. In 1927, the Superintendent of Telegraphs Perth approved the closure of Eucla Telegraph Station. New telegraph lines and modern technologies meant the telegraph station became obsolete, and with little employment opportunities left, the town's inhabitants slowly drifted away. Thank you all for listening to the first of our Christmas tales. Now I would like to introduce Melissa from our Victoria office, who will be telling us about some Christmas traditions, including a favourite pastime, or not, Christmas shopping.
Hi there. My name's Mel. I'm based in the North Melbourne office of the National Archives, and I'm coming to you from the lands of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people. Today, I'd like to share with you some of the beautiful photographs we have in the collection that largely relate to the Melbourne Christmas tradition that is shopping. These photographs were taken over the course of the 1950s, 60s, 70s and 80s, and many of them were done so for the Australian News and Information Bureau, whose responsibility was the promotion of Australia's image. The hope was to advertise Australia as having a reputation for celebration, culture and joy. So we're well into that time of the year when Christmas trees start popping up in department stores. Streets become lined with bunting and lights, and cars inexplicably start wearing reindeer antlers. Melbourne City, suburban shopping centres and shopping strips have been dressing up for Christmas for decades. The decorations not only bring a sense of the Christmas season to life, but lure shoppers from all over. Here on the left, we see the T&G Assurance building in Collins Street, taken in 1959, along with one of the Coles stores in the city. And on the right is the department store Foy & Gibson, who at the time boasted that they had the largest Santa in the Southern Hemisphere. It was 3 stories high. These photographs show the array of toys available for people doing Christmas shopping. While the photos may be in black and white and the fashions are slightly different, little has changed when it comes to the variety of toys that are still available in stores today. Here we see beautiful soft toys, bicycles, even outboard motors. There's no age limit on toys. An enduring Christmas tradition for many is the trip into town to see Santa. Mums, dads and kids would line up for hours for a chance to explore Santa's village at the North Pole, conveniently and of course temporarily, located on the rooftop garden of Myer, Melbourne. All the waiting was worth it when you got to meet Santa, have your photo taken with him and tell him what you wanted for Christmas. Another tradition close to the hearts of many Melburnians and visitors to Melbourne is the annual visit to the Myer Christmas windows in Bourke Street. This tradition started in 1956 by Fred Asmussen of Myer. It began with a depiction of Santa at the Olympics. The displays are brought to life with the use of mechanical puppets, and a whole story can be told over the course of the windows. A trip to the windows can take several hours as people crowd 5 and 6 deep to get a look at the show. In these photographs, we see people crowding around to see scenes from Aladdin in 1959. Depending on your age, you might remember Myer window displays of Snugglepot and Cuddlepie, or perhaps The Wizard of Oz. And this year, I believe the theme is Bluey. In the 1960s and 70s, to cater to Melbourne's ever-growing urban sprawl, Suburban shopping malls were developed in places outside of the city. At Christmas time, these shopping centres followed the example of the city by putting up decorations and creating a festive environment, enticing shoppers come November and December. Some of you may find these scenes familiar. From left to right, we see Northland Shopping Centre, Doncaster Shopping Town, and Greensboro Plaza. All taken in 1982, these photos give us a glimpse into suburban shopping at the time. The same year, the world's first online shopping companies, those that eventually gave rise to Amazon and eBay, were being rolled out in the US. And while certainly giving the traditional physical shop a run for its money come Christmas time, people still choose to visit their local shopping centres or the city to do their shopping and to welcome the Christmas season. It's not shopping alone that draws people into the city at Christmas. Carols by Candlelight has been attracting tens of thousands of people to Melbourne on Christmas Eve since 1938. The story goes that in 1937, Norman Banks, a well-known Melbourne radio broadcaster, was walking home on Christmas Eve. Looking into a window, he saw an elderly woman sitting alone, listening to the Christmas carol Away in a Manger on the radio by the light of a candle. And so he was inspired to bring together people on Christmas Eve to sing Christmas carols, and a tradition was born. These photographs depict scenes from 1959 from the middle and to the right, and the photograph on the left of the children singing is from 1970. Christmas traditions in Victoria are by no means limited to shopping and carols. No matter what traditions remain close to your heart, this time of year, enjoy yourself and stay safe. Thank you. I'll now hand you over to Amanda King-Hardy to shine a light on Christmas in the ACT.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. Thanks, Melissa. So I'll just take us to the next one here. Okay, so I'm Amanda, and I'm coming to you from our Canberra office, which is Ngunnawal Land, and mine is on a copyrighted Little Christmas, so copyright and patent records. So the Canberra office is home to a wide range of record types, but one of my favourite and my chosen category today is copyright and patent records. Copyright records take a few different forms, including registers and correspondence. However, hands down, the best part of these files has to be the exhibits, which were submitted as evidence of the copyright. Books, music, dramatic plays, artworks, pamphlets, photographs, the list goes on. This collection of records provides a varied and eclectic view of over 100 years of creative endeavour and response to the world as these applicants saw it. One category of copyright files are artistic copyright files, which contain a vast range of unique, beautiful, and sometimes amusing artworks. Here you can see a selection of artistic exhibits. So we have a photograph of servicemen having Christmas dinner in 1918, a painting of a kookaburra, I believe that's actually on a papyrus paper, a holiday advertisement for a department store, and an 1881 lithograph printed Christmas card. And in the top right corner is a series, just one in a series of dad joke-esque Christmas postcards designed by a Melbourne man in 1909. Most of them were not suitable to put on this presentation, but that one snuck through. Some artworks in our copyright collection can take surprising forms. When preparing for this presentation, I noticed a listing on our database for what I thought was a photograph of a sculpture and ordered it to have a look. So imagine my surprise when I received a call from our preservation staff letting me know that I had a little Christmas visitor waiting for us in the lab, who of course for preservation reasons could not make the journey across to my desk. This fantastic little Santa Claus sculpture was made in 1931 and is still in immaculate condition thanks to our skilled conservators. Following these photos, he was returned safely to our repository, but he left behind a mystery of what the intended use was for the bag on his back. Some of my colleagues believed lollies, tiny gifts. I think someone even suggested a plant. So I'll leave it with you to wonder what it could have been. Sorry, won't be a sec. Got myself. There we go. Okay. As well as art, people also made their mark through stories. We hold thousands of literary copyright files from books, poems, articles, and more. On the left is a copy of a short story from 1921 titled Santa Claus Message, a story set in a mining camp where families were doing it tough on Christmas. And on the right, we have a hardcover copy of an Elves and Fairies book. I may have spent a little bit too long going through this one because it just had the most gorgeous illustrations. It was published in 1920 and includes illustrations such as these Christmas-like elves and children and fairies playing in a billabong. These types of files give us unique insights into the lives, landscapes, and most of all the imaginations of those who put forward their unique works for registration. I'm hoping you've all caught the little puns I've put into the headings along here. Patents of inventions are also a fascinating area of the collection and truly so much fun to explore. From machines that manufacture ice cream cones over on the left, to a stirrable teapot, an automatic vending machine from 1930, to Burley brand, so the bra brand that many may know today, brand corsets in 1927. One could spend hours looking through some of the weird and wonderful things that in a number of cases paved the way for objects that we use today. But this is a Christmas talk after all, and I don't think car headlights, while interesting, are particularly Christmassy. So I'll show you a couple of Christmas-themed inventions. So artificial Christmas trees existed as early as the 1880s, though at that time they were made from goose feathers. Later they used a brush-like bristles, but from the 1950s, artificial trees made from plastic and metal gained popularity, and with it came a host of ideas about how they could be improved. On the left, you can see the specifications for a folding Christmas tree submitted in 1958. This concept should look quite familiar to those watching for anyone who's put up a tree, as at the heart of the inventor's design was a tree with a central post, branches angled in a way that they could be folded in, so that it could be packed into a smaller box, making them easier to sell and transport. A similar hinge design is now the standard on most store-bought Christmas trees today. Can't quite imagine trying to put one away without them, to be honest. I'm not sure how that would have looked before. On the right is a patent design for a translucent plastic revolving Christmas tree. So I think interpreting it similar to a lampshade, complete with glass glitter, decorative vents, and a heated lamp inside that powered the movement. While certainly beautiful, I can imagine that one would nowadays require quite a few safety checks, putting something heated inside of a plastic tree. Christmas trees in general were a popular theme throughout the Christmas patent records. This one in 1985 from two British inventors for a Christmas tree lighting system. In their application, they wrote, the domestic Christmas trees are conventionally decorated by a string of bulbs at spaced locations. Such lighting systems necessitate that the Christmas tree be redraped each year. So their argument was that it could be not only tiresome, but also risk electric shock. So the object of the invention was to overcome the above drawbacks. What they invented is a Christmas tree lighting system which was woven within or enclosed within the branches of the tree. And again, for those who have spent a fair bit of time setting up your Christmas trees in the last few weeks, you'll notice it looks very much like the now popular pre-lit trees that have been a game changer for those who dreaded the yearly detangling of Christmas lights. And to finish off my part, I absolutely have to mention musical copyright records. So sheet music is a particular feature of the copyright collection, and the musical records themselves are unsurpassed when seeking evidence of the sentimental streak in the Australian character. Almost every public occasion is celebrated with musical works, and Christmas is certainly no exception. Because I always find it quite odd that we drive along, many of us drive along singing about snowballs and hot cocoa while it's 40 degrees outside and the road's melting, I made it a mission to find some Aussie-themed musical works in our files, some of which are pictured here. Many of these were written in the post-war period in the late 1940s and early 1950s, and feature lines like "I'm breathing in the gum leaves and wonder," "bush lands everywhere," and even a musical letter to Santa stating there'll be no need to bring your sleigh. You could not use one out this way. These songs are a great read or play if you're more talented than me in the musical department, and show the continual development of Australian identity and culture. Honestly, yeah, these records, I could get lost in them for hours, and I have on occasion. But that's it for my part, and I'll now hand over to Nicholas in the Hobart office.
Thank you, Amanda. That was very, very festive. Good afternoon, everyone, and early holiday wishes to you all. My name's Nicholas, and I'm an archivist down here in the Tasmanian office. And thank you all for coming, and of course, thank you for Rachel for organising today's webinar. Well, it's a joyous, warm time of the year down here in Hobart. And prior to today, in the lead up, I found myself asking myself the same question: what makes Tasmanians tick in December? Now, of course, we all love to spend time with our family, the presents, some of us with our respective gods, but what has struck me is the incredible outdoor experiences on offer. December in Tasmania is a time of action here, and as our online catalogue record search suggests, which I'll take you through. So since beginning with the Tasmanian office this year, I've made it a priority to familiarise myself with our local collection for the benefit of our researchers, but of course for my own peace of mind. And today, I'd just like to share a few of those highlights which I've found. So here we have an image of a group of hikers performing the particularly arduous ascent of Federation Peak. So Federation Peak is one of Tasmania's most challenging hikes, and it's nestled in the eastern Arthur's Range, which is the southwest of Tassie. What makes it so extreme is how unpredictable the weather conditions can be and the grueling exposed areas of climbing. So you really have to pick your time when you're going to do it and do a lot of research before. But as you can see here, it's a real postcard moment and makes for great advertising for the state. And plummeting back down to sea level, here we're looking at another image of a group of yachts racing on the Derwent River. And we think that this image is looking from the eastern shore, possibly from Bellerive, looking over towards the city. And back on dry land, here we have another fine weather phenomenon in Hobart, in Tasmania. So however visually wonderful, this item details the item details on record search shed no light on where the wood chopping contest was or whether the third from the right contestant was blinded by the sun. Along the barrier, you can see spectators with hands over their eyes, providing some shade from the glare. Now, we in the Tasmanian office think that this glare caused the chopper to lose his footing and go stumbling down the plank, only just riding himself in the photograph pictured. So these investigations led to another fairly underwhelming discovery for us, given that the record is dated. But the TAA, which is on the billboard in the background, stands for the Trans Australia Airlines, who, among other things, operated the original airport bus, which was an independent predecessor to what we now know as the Skybus. And the final clue we followed up was investigating another name on the advertisement barrier, So on the right of screen, you see what we assume is wonder decks and pools. And I was hopeful the beginning of the telephone number might lead to something. As we can see, the area code is 25, but unfortunately it didn't. But given the nice weather and using some common sense, we assume that this photograph was taken in northern Tasmania, and that's where the woodchoppers were hosted. Finally, I will leave you with these images for a taste of our Tasmanian Office 2024 webinar, which will be held in October. So we will be looking at the very interesting history of the rise and fall of apple growing in the Huon Valley, which is just south of where our office is now in Hobart. So during the presentation, we will look at the beginnings of what we now know as the EU, but back in 1973 was known as the European Economic Community, and how this had huge effects on the prosperity of our Tasmanian apple exports when trading, particularly with Britain all those years ago. This historical narrative will touch on all things from digging up apple trees like thistles to even migration as a whole. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. I'll now hand the baton over to Sally Drake, who is in our Hobart office, in our South Australian office.
Hello everybody, my name's Kelly and we're on Kaurna land here and in the Adelaide office of the National Archives. Let me just find my slide. There we go. We're going to have a look at the Christmas pageant in South Australia. First of all though, we are going to look at the pageant, but I found a couple of things in a file that I just kind of had to include and share with people. So I wanted to talk to you about Christmas puddings, and I found these records deep in a file somewhere when I was researching. And it was about, we're going to talk about dried fruit as it happens, because that's a Christmassy thing. And the poster on the left that you can see comes from our collection, and it was taken during the 1920s at a time when, according to my research, the dried fruit industry had experienced a crash and prices had fallen dramatically. The poster was part of an advertising campaign created for the UK market and designed to entice those from the motherland to use wonderful Australian dried fruit in their Christmas puddings. Hence the request to make your Christmas pudding a British Empire pudding. The smaller newspaper article on the right also talks about, and it's from the Adelaide Chronicle, talks about Canada's reluctance to purchase South Australian sultanas when those imported from places like Greece were so much cheaper at the time. We're having some connectivity problems here in our office in South Australia, so do bear with me. I'm not sure if it's coming through successfully. Yeah, cool. All right, let's have another look at, so I just wanted to also show you these dried fruit themed pictures from our collection. Again, we're looking at a campaign that started in the 60s and went through to the 1980s, when there was another big push to promote Australian sultanas and dried fruit to overseas markets. These photos are not only fabulous, but topical because they feature Santa Claus, and he's actually wearing a Christmas wetsuit. And as you can see, they're not fantastic photos, but you can see that Santa's being a very versatile water sportsman, as well as carrying a huge array of heavy fruitcakes and puddings. So that was just my little exciting dried fruit quest for you all. Let me just get to the next one. Oh, too excited. So as I said before, we're going to look at some content specifically from South Australia. And this city of Adelaide has a lovely, rich Christmas tradition in its annual Christmas pageant. And the next lot of slides are going to give you a glimpse into the origins and history of the event. And it's one day that's a really firm fixture on the city calendar and much loved by its citizens, including myself. So in 1934, Father Christmas, hang on, let me just double check. Sorry, my slides are doing their own thing here. Was introduced to, no, we're missing a slide. Well, might be a second, everybody. I think my connection's dropped out. Okay. Let's go back to the first slide. And let's talk about Sir Edward Hayward. And he's the founder of the pageant. And he owned the city department store called John Martin's, also known as Johnny's, which was an Adelaide icon for over 130 years. So he was actually inspired to establish the pageant after a buying trip to the US, where he witnessed the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade in New York and the Santa Claus Parade in Toronto. And according to the Adelaide Legend, it's reported that he was determined to create a similar experience for the children of South Australia. And the first Children's Christmas Parade was held in November 1933. And that was actually at the height of the Great Depression. So you can imagine it was a thing of joy for the population. It ran for about 40 minutes and it had 8 floats and 3 marching bands and was a massive success. There were 200,000 spectators, and it was supposed to be a one-off event, but actually became an enduring legacy as the John Martin's Christmas pageant. So I've got some fantastic photographs in the collection of the pageant. In 1934, they introduced Santa Claus, and also the tradition of the pageant finishing at the Magic Cave. And this Magic Cave had actually been created way back in 1905 and located within, as they are, the John Martin's department store. And it was one of those Christmas fantasy worlds that we've seen in a few other slides. But it's also been credited as supporting children's cultural heritage in the city, as well as providing that community Christmas experience. So you can't have a pageant without a queen. So the first queen was introduced in 1939, and her purpose was for wartime fundraising. And sadly, I don't have a photograph of her, but there's some lovely ones for you to feast your eyes on. From 41 to 44, there was no Christmas pageant due to World War II, but in 1945, there was a Victory Christmas pageant held, and that was celebrating the end of the war. It was also the first radio broadcast of the pageant, which continued until 1959. So in 46, part of the pageant was a Christmas party for 800 orphans, and Father Christmas came to visit them, and that too became an annual event associated with the pageant. So between 49 and 59, we see the selection of a pageant queen that Sir Edward Hayward would select every year. But from 1959 onwards, the staff of the department store were actually the ones to choose the pageant queen at that point. And there we go. It wasn't until 2009 that the Queen and Princess were in fact joined by a pageant king and princes. So we're just diversifying our royal family there. Okay. In 1961, the Prime Minister Robert Menzies attended the pageant, and he was the first, and dare I say only, Prime Minister to have attended. That's obviously an event that we love, but maybe isn't shared by all. So in 69, the crowds actually grew to 500,000 as television broadcasting and interstate broadcasting sort of became a great influence. And by 1970, there were 16 new floats. Sorry, got slow internet here. In 1983, Sir Edward Hayward, the founder of the pageant that I referred to earlier, passed away just months before they celebrated its 50th anniversary. So just on a different little lilt here, in 1988, there was a tradition started where the children would draw on the streets, and they gave out chalk to keep the children entertained prior to the start of the pageant. Because it is so popular, it means that families gather from the very early morning of the pageant, and they're all vying for a perfect spot to watch the parade. So these days, the chalk art on the pavement adds to the magic of the floats as they sail past. And it remains for days after the pageant has moved on for another year. So it's just a little bit of magic that keeps going. So in 1993, the pageant celebrated its diamond anniversary of 60 years with 72 floats and 1,600 people taking part and a crowd of 400,000 people. I'm a bit into bees at the moment, so you all got a picture of a bee float. In 1996, John Martin sold the pageant. It's a bit less nostalgic at this point, to the state government, and it's now owned by Events South Australia. And yeah, a little less glamorous, but the naming rights actually sit with the 4 South Australian credit unions until 2019, when it became the National Pharmacies Christmas Pageant. So that might be something that you see written about the place. So I just wanted to show you 2020 for the first time in pageant history. It became a twilight event at the Adelaide Oval because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So major events were cancelled across the world, and it meant there was a lottery for the 25,000 tickets that were issued for the pageant rather than the huge crowd of 400,000 or 500,000 that it's used to passing through. 2021 also was a COVID Adelaide Oval event. So back to 2022, up until now, the pageant's back on the streets of Adelaide again. And I just wanted to thank you all very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy your end of year festivities. I'm going to hand over to Peter Marie in the Brisbane office, and she's going to talk about Christmas in sunny Queensland.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Marie from the Queensland office on the land of the Turrbal and Yagara peoples. Today, I will be showcasing how the Sunshine State has celebrated Christmas over the years. You'll notice the iconic big pineapple, the heritage-listed tourist attraction at the Sunshine Coast on my slide here. Last Christmas, the 16-metre structure was reimagined as a giant Christmas tree, adorned with tinsel, baubles, and colourful lights as part of Big W's Christmas campaign, Make a Little Magic. A common theme you'll notice in this presentation is that commercial brands have often inserted themselves seamlessly into the celebration of Christmas. The image on the bottom left of the screen is of an Italian migrant family and their friends enjoying Christmas dinner in 1967 on Redcliffe Beach. And the image next to it is Santa Claus in 1983 at Surfers Paradise on the Gold Coast. Queensland Office has a wonderful collection of post office history records, photographs, and even some Australian Post advertisements. After the Second World War, many Australians were eager to embrace the Christmas spirit and send Christmas greetings and parcels to loved ones interstate or overseas. Post offices struggled with the increased volume of telegrams and mail, so the Postmaster General's Department printed posters and signs each year urging Australians to post early. These were displayed on postal vans, shipping offices, and in newspapers. This lovely poster of a young girl posting her Christmas mail is from 1949. Here we have a photo of the General Post Office in Brisbane's Queen Street in 1959, with its sizable banner advising, "It's time to start, post now for Christmas." And just to press the point, these displays on the left were placed in the windows at the GPO. I couldn't help but include the two posters on the right from the Western Australia office. The ominous-looking poster on the bottom right shows that the Postmaster General's Department meant business. But before we could post our presents, we first needed to hunt for the perfect Christmas gift to bestow on our loved ones. For decades up until the early 1980s, Fortitude Valley, one suburb over from the CBD, was king when it came to shopping at Christmas and celebrating the season. And the McWhirter's department store was one of its major retail players. This is an image of McWhirter's in 1955. The store ceased operating in the valley by 1988 with the rise of CBD-based shopping in large centres in the suburbs, such as Chermside and Indooroopilly. McWhirter's was listed on the Heritage Registry in 1992. The image on the left is of crowds gathering outside McWhirter's awaiting the arrival of Santa following the annual Valley Christmas Parade. Families arrived early to view the magnificent McWhirter's Christmas window displays. On the right is the Brunswick Street Christmas Parade. Unfortunately, the dates of these images are unknown. Every year, Brisbaneites flock to King George Square on the 1st of December to see the lighting of the 22-metre Brisbane Christmas tree. The tree came into being in 1954 when the Women's Auxiliary of the Queensland National Gallery Society submitted a proposal to the council for a Christmas tree to be displayed in front of City Hall, to bring Brisbane into conformity with similar decorations in cities abroad, such as Trafalgar Square in London. On the 15th of August 1945, although it wasn't the festive season, City Hall was decorated with Christmas lights to celebrate the victory over Japan Day and the end of the wartime blackout. Nowadays, an animated Christmas story is projected onto City Hall each year. This is the Lot Golden Casket City Hall Light Spectacular, and it certainly is spectacular, with its illuminated clock tower rising 92 metres above the ground. Golden Casket is, of course, Queensland's Lottery Corporation. And what would Christmas be without a national television special? A segment of the ABC TV special, Christmas Around Australia, was filmed at Amberley, wherein students from the Amberley State School sang a Christmas carol against a backdrop of Amberley-based aircraft, alongside the RAF band performing We Wish You a Merry Christmas. And Santa arrived at the base by helicopter. We can see from the rest of the program schedule that earlier His Royal Highness Prince Philip delivered a Christmas message, as did Don Lane, Bert Newton, Olivia Newton-John, and the Bee Gees. A Greek children's choir also sang a Greek Christmas carol. Although this run sheet came to the National Archives from the RAF Base Amberley headquarters, we also have ABC scripts and program run sheets in the collection in our ABC series. Queensland Office will leave you with these title cards that we found in our ABC collection that would have been broadcast to the audience from ABC News teams in North Queensland. The cards range from 1960 to 1985. Thanks for listening to Christmas in the Sunshine State. I'll now hand you over to Bree from the New South Wales office.
Yes, hello, thank you very much, Peter Marie. I've decided to have a look at, or a peek into a Christmas past, Christmas 1941. My name is Bree and I am coming to you from just here in the New South Wales office. So the National Archives is home to lots and lots of different record types, including paper, photographic and audiovisual material. And put together, they can give a really wonderful little snapshot of a past Christmas of a different kind. So today I thought we'd take a little look at Christmas in 1941 based on some of the records found in the New South Wales office. For context, Most of the world had been in the depths of the Second World War for just over 2 years at this time, many men serving overseas. People were separated from their loved ones and wartime rationing was in force. Our Prime Minister, John Curtin, had recently declared war on Japan after the attack on US naval base Pearl Harbor. It's a really fascinating time to look back on, as well as compare and contrast how we prepare for Christmas celebrations today. So right now, there's only 6 sleeps until Christmas. I'm sure many have already sent their Christmas presents and Christmas cards, but I'm sure a few of us will be using modern technology and sending last-minute text messages and emails with vouchers instead. So during wartime in 1941, you would need to be much more organised. So if you thought Australia post-Christmas cut-off dates were early, take a closer look at this photograph. It's a photograph found in a General Post Office Sydney series and is of the window display out the front of the Sydney GPO, reminding the public that their last chance to post Christmas parcels to their loved ones in the Defence Forces overseas was in October of that year. If you wanted to send a Christmas telegram instead, you had a little bit more time. You could lodge your message up to Christmas Eve. It would be a little bit hard to know, though, as the creation of this sign was actually delayed. In a uniquely wartime situation, the departmental workshops who were supposed to make the sign couldn't because they were actually busy urgently blacking out the windows of the GPO, seen to the photo on the right. This was to make it more difficult for enemy bombers to identify cities as targets at night time, and it seems that the signage work had to actually be outsourced to a local business instead. If you need some last-minute ideas for Christmas presents, ABC radio presenter Valerie Purves has some excellent ideas. So this is a script from New South Wales series SP300/1, which is a series of ABC radio talk scripts, and it's a real treasure trove of information about what was important in society in Australia in the mid-20th century. Ms. Purves tells us that tea sets, miniature handbags, boxes of notepaper are great for little girls, while model tanks or aeroplanes, instructional and amusing books or puzzles are fantastic presents for little boys this year. The men in your life will appreciate a desk calendar or subscription to a really good magazine, while women will enjoy something inexpensive, useful or easily made, including stockings, which were quite hard to get at the time, or even an apron with extra large pockets. And Ms. Purves also gives us some do's and don'ts for a wartime Christmas, which I actually think is still pretty useful, including do limit your gift giving to children, immediate relations, and very old friends, and do keep your recipients in mind. Very young people will not appreciate useful gifts, she says, while adults will love something practical. And do not make cushions as gifts, as they take a little bit too long, and do not be a yours in anticipationer, a term that Ms. Purves used for those who like to keep score with gift giving. And finally, once the gifts are purchased and the Christmas cards are sent, the Christmas holidays can be enjoyed. Unfortunately, except if you are celebrating Christmas in 1941. I mentioned before that leading up to Christmas in 1941, Australia had just declared war on Japan, which meant the threat to Australian mainland was now closer to home than ever. This also meant that the manufacturing for the war effort, particularly weapons or munitions, was an absolute priority, and Christmas holidays were cancelled for many on the home front. Prime Minister John Curtin issued an order that annual leave over the Christmas period was banned for many. However, the munitions workers in the country had actually already volunteered to give up their holidays for the war effort. And so on this very day, 82 years ago, Minister for Munitions Norman Makin recorded a Christmas message in Sydney that was distributed via disc to all munitions factories in the country, thanking workers for their tireless effort. And we actually hold this record or this recording in our collection. So if I can get the brief snippet to work, which it doesn't look like it's going to, unfortunately. No, it's not going to work at the moment, unfortunately. I do apologise. But essentially, you've got the transcript on the left-hand side there. The red and the green is what he said. Control click maybe. No, unfortunately not. Yeah, so the transcript on the left-hand side is directly from the recording. And it's this wonderful recording with this fantastic grainy, crackling sound of Minister for Munitions thanking everybody for giving up their Christmas holidays. And unfortunately, while I can't play it right now, if you're interested in listening to the full recording, it will be available in any of our research centres to listen to. So you can drop in and have a listen there. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed our little peek into the past, and we wish you all a very merry 2023 Christmas.